Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Joseph, and welcome to JoeKnowsPhoto.com. Today, we're going to be talking about...
Dude, that's Jared Pollin's intro.
Do what now?
Don't rip off Jared Pollin's intro.
Jared Pollin? Who the is Jared Pollin? Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Joseph. Today we're going to be working on developing this film noir style photo. I took this photo with an actor named Carl Childers. He's an Atlanta-based actor. And we did this photo for the Metro Atlanta Creative Society workshop. This was a test shoot. We're holding a workshop, just in case you're interested, we're holding a workshop on May 15th in Atlanta. If you're in the area, you should come out, learn some lighting techniques from us, work with some models. We've got 6 different models coming in. Yeah, anyways, check out our website, www.atlcreatives.com, for more information on that. So anyways, let's get into this. The topics we're going to cover in this tutorial are going to be covering the photo shoot. So we're going to talk through the photo shoot. I'm going to explain the process of directing Carl, of setting up the shoot, I'm going to talk about what I had in mind in this photo and the challenges I had for trying to set up this shot. We're going to do some Lightroom raw conversion, getting the photos ready to take into Photoshop. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in a few different photos and composite them together in Photoshop. Number 4, we're going to clean up the image. So that's going to be a lot of the clone stamp tool, removing things that we don't want in the picture. Number 5, we're going to be doing some contrast work, and I'm not talking about just moving a slider back and forth. We're going to really dial in some great contrast into very specific parts of the image. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and then we're going to do some dodging and burning, and then finally we're going to finish off the image with adding just a little bit of style. So we're going to do things like lighten up the black levels, we're going to sharpen the image, we're going to add a vignette, we're going to do some little bit of noise work, and then we're going to look to see if we can improve things by adding lights where there weren't lights before. Alrighty, so let's get started. Here is the photo that we're going to create today. So this is a film noir style photo. If you're not familiar with film noir is a classic movie genre that has to do with a lot of, it's kind of like your criminal and detective kind of stories. It was typically shot in black and white. It was shot on film, of course. Back in the day, you only had film, no digital. But it was shot on film. It had a little bit of a grainy look to it. They used to use really stylized lighting for this, so things were lit from the side a lot. They used a lot of go-betweens, gobo for short. Having different light patterns on faces and on bodies was common. So using things like blinds to light a photo, and then there were a lot of strong shadows in the photos as well. We shot this at Atlanta Photo Works in Beaufort, Georgia. And the idea I had for this shot is I wanted to have a shot of Carl looking out of a window. And there were some blinds there, and the blinds were creating a light pattern on his face, and then also the light pattern was shining on the wall behind him. So I wanted Carl, or I wanted my subject to be sandwiched between this light pattern from the blinds. Alright, so I'm in Lightroom right now. I'm going to start off by showing you what my setup kind of looked like. So since this was a pretty tight shot, I really didn't have to do that much to create the set for this. All I needed to do is have some blinds. We had these wooden shutters here that you can see in this photo. So I took these shutters and I clamped these to a light stand. So you can see my little clamp down here at the bottom. There's another clamp up top. So I just secured this shutter to a light stand, and then I'm using a bare speed light, a Yongnuo speed light, and just blasting that through the shutter. And whenever it blasts through the shutter, it's going to create the light's going to pass through the shutters here, and it's going to create this pattern right here on the wall. And then whenever I stick Carl into the photo, it's going to create that pattern on his face as well. Whenever you do that, of course, light's kind of wanting to go everywhere in the photo, and I don't want to see any light on the back wall except for what's passing through the shutters. So in order to block that light, I had to put up what photographers call a flag. So a flag is just basically something that you can use to block light. And so what I'm using for flags here is I'm using these 20-inch by 30-inch foam core panels that I bought at like a Dollar General for $1 a piece. Things are dirt cheap. So I've got two of these guys on either side of the shutters here, and I just clamped these to light stands, and so they're just blocking the light. As you can see right here, this was a test shot, and I've got a little bit of light sneaking in between my my back flag and my shutter right here. But I saved this photo, and we're actually going to use this photo for compositing in a minute, and I'll show you why right now. So when we started shooting Carl in this, first thing I noticed is that whenever Carl stuck his head into the photo, that his face was capturing the light like I wanted it to, but that light wasn't traveling to the wall behind him because his face was just blocking it from hitting the wall behind him. So after taking a few shots, we realized that that there was no way to get the light pattern on the wall and on his face at the same time while we're using these shutters, which were a pretty narrow set of shutters. So that means that we're going to have to composite, and by composite I mean we're going to have to bring several different photos together. And so for this, we're going to have to composite the light pattern on the wall behind him, and I'm going to actually use this photo right here for my light pattern. So I'm going to composite this area right here in the photo where you have the light pattern against the wall, and I'm going to composite that in behind the photo that I select of Carl looking out the blinds. So this was one of the first shots of Carl looking through the blinds. I just had him step in, and I explained to him, you know, you're like a detective, or maybe you're a bad guy. You're looking out these blinds. You're waiting for someone to come into this apartment or to this house or whatever this building is. You're waiting for someone to come in. So I wanted him to look a little bit creepy. I wanted him to look a little bit malicious. And Carl had this idea of smoking a cigar while I was doing this, and smoke is great for capturing light that's coming in, and especially since he's right here next to these blinds, where there's slivers of light and dark and light and dark. The smoke is going to help show those slivers of light. So it was really great for this photo. So, like I said, this was one of the first shots that we took, and then we kind of went through a progression of just getting different shots of Carl. The only direction I really gave Carl for this was, I told him that he needs to look mean, he needs to look creepy, but also I told him that we need to make sure that this light is catching his eyes. So I wanted to be able to see the catch light in his eyes from my strobe. And so in order for that to happen, he has to be able to see the strobe through the shutters. So if he can't see the strobe through the shutters, that means the light from the strobe is not going to hit his eyes as it passes through. So I just told him just to make sure that he can see my light source. And then after a few of these shots, I said, hey, wait a minute, what if instead of being like on ground level and you're just looking straight out, what if you're on the second floor and you're looking down a little bit? So maybe he's on the second floor of a building in a city, and this light is passing through. It could be from a street light, or it could be from a car that's driving up, from the headlights of a car. So in a minute, you'll see that he stops looking more horizontal, and he's kind of starts looking down at an angle a little bit. And then just in case you're curious about my settings here, I'm shooting this with a Canon 6D, which is a full frame camera. I'm shooting this with a 17 to 40 f4L lens, the Canon lens. I'm shooting this at 26 millimeters, although I do bounce back and forth between about 25 to 35. But this shot right here is at 25. And then the rest of my settings are the same throughout the photo shoot. So I'm shooting this at f4.5 at 1/180th of a second at 125 ISO. I'm using two speed lights here. I've got one speed light coming, blasting through the shutters. That's my main light. And you have to forgive me, I don't remember what the settings were for that. And then I've got a second speed light, which is my fill light coming from camera right. That would be kind of pointing at Carl's left ear there. And that's just used as fill. If I didn't have that fill speed light, then whatever was not illuminated through the light coming through the shutters would just be pure black. So I really needed that extra speed light just to be able to see a little bit of detail right here on the side of Carl's body and on the side of his face right here and the hair, and then making sure that the wall behind him doesn't just go pure black on us. Alright, so here's where Carl starts looking down a little bit. Making sure that his eyes kind of stay in there. I just had him smoke on that cigar. Alright, and then, so this was the image that I chose out of this entire set. I chose this... for one, I liked his expression. I liked that he was squinting a little bit. He looked a little bit mean. Both of his eyes were in there. I liked that one of his eyes was almost totally hidden, but you can barely just see that catch light right there. It just adds to kind of this creepy feeling that I get from the photo. Like I said, I love the smoke. I love the way his hand is holding the cigar. I love the ash on the cigar. And also, I shot this photo at with a different lens that I showed you a second ago. This is with my 85 1.8 Canon lens, and I kind of like the way the 85 captured this as opposed to shooting this wide. It just feels like you're in the image a little bit more than with the wide shot. Alright, so now that we know which images we're using this photo of Carl, and we're using just this part of the light pattern hitting the wall. Now that we know what we're going to be using, I'm going to show you guys how I converted these photos from RAW. So both of these photos you see, this is straight out of the camera. I haven't done anything to process these photos yet. So we need to get these photos ready for Lightroom, or sorry, we need to get these photos ready for Photoshop. And so when I take these photos into Photoshop, I want it to already be in black and white. I want to make sure that I can see all the details that I want to be able to see in the final photo. So if anything looks like it might be clipping to black right now, I want to make sure I brighten that up. And then I just want to make sure that as a whole, things are looking kind of gritty, they're looking a little bit contrasty, and that I'm trying to get as much work as I can done in Lightroom. Because it's so much easier to get things done in Lightroom than it is in Photoshop. It's a lot faster in Lightroom. So in order to start the conversion here, I'm going to hit D to go to my developer panel. For this, since I want to make sure that everything's really gritty and contrasty, I'm going to start by just building the grittiness and the contrast in this photo. So I'm going to do that by starting with the clarity slider. Clarity slider is a great way just to make things look contrasty and sharper right off the bat. So it adds in like kind of a local contrast. It starts to give it a little bit of a hyper-realistic look, kind of like an HDR over-processed look. It definitely does that if you go too far with it. I'm gonna go up to about a 50 or 60 on this. Whenever I take it into black and white, you'll see that looks a little bit diminished. To me, black and white handles high contrast images a lot better than color images do. So I put the clarity at 60. I'm going to go down here under the tone curve panel, and I'm going to change my point curve from linear to strong contrast. So this is where I like to do most of my contrast work, is down here under the point curve. The reason why I like to do that is because whatever you do in this panel gets applied to your image first, and then from there we can actually go in and we can dial in that contrast into different areas using this panel right here. So we can use the highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks levels to really tweak that contrast the way we want to. So looking at this photo, I see that the coat right here, this area, is very dark. If you hover your mouse pointer over an area of the photo, and if you look up here in the top right area, right under the histogram, whenever I'm hovering my cursor over the part of the photo, it's going to show you the levels for R, G, and B. So you see right there, the RGB levels are all less than 1%. That means the luminosity for those levels is almost pure black. So I don't want it to be that dark in that area. I want to at least be able to see a little bit of detail. So in order to bring back a little detail that I lost whenever I added that strong contrast, I'm just going to take my black levels and I'm going to slide those up a little bit. And that's going to bring back a little bit of detail. If you look, I've brought it up to above 1%. I'm going to bring this up a little bit more. Let's see. So 100 doesn't really do that much. So if that's the case, I need to start dragging my exposure up, which is going to bring the levels of everything in the photo up, but I'll fix the bright parts in a minute. So if I do my exposure to plus 0.8, and now if I look down here, looks like I'm hovering somewhere between 1 and 3, almost 4 in this area, which that's good with me. That means that we'll be able to see some detail in those areas. Alright, so now whenever I dragged my exposure up, I made things a little too bright on his face here. So I'm going to compensate for the brightness on his face by bringing down the white levels. The white levels is going to change just the brightest parts of the image. Since there isn't anything really in the upper echelons of this histogram here, changing the whites didn't do a whole lot. But changing the highlights here, that is going to change anything that's kind of in the upper half here is going to start be dragging down by the highlights. So something about like that looks good to me. And then I'm going to see what happens if I move the shadows slider around. Not a whole lot is going on. If I drag shadows down, it starts to make this darker again. And if I drag shadows up, what is it doing? It's not doing a whole lot. I'm just going to leave shadows alone. And so now let's go ahead and do a quick black and white conversion. If you hit the V key inside of Lightroom just automatically desaturates it, and it just figures out what it thinks that might be an interesting black and white conversion. I always like to tweak this. So if you scroll down a little bit and you find the color panel, once you go to black and white, it automatically switches you over to the black and white options here in the tabs. In order to tweak this, I'm going to click on this little handle, this little circle handle thing, and what this does is it allows me to hover over a certain group of pixels in the image, and I can move I can scroll or click and drag up, and it'll brighten up that color in the photo. If I scroll down, it'll darken that color in the photo. So using this feature is all about affecting colors in the photo. So if I'm going to be affecting colors, I need to go back into color mode. So I hit V to go back into color, and I need to look to see what kind of colors do I actually have in this photo. Most everything here is pretty warm. We've got skin tone, which is an orangey red kind of a color. We've got this burgundy, almost a magenta color over here on the blinds. Carl's wearing black and white, but it looks like the black and the white might have a little bit of a blue hue to it, and then on the wall behind him, that's mostly yellow. And then we've got the brick up here that's kind of red. So this photo as a whole is pretty warm. So if I start to affect the, like, say, let's say if I want to brighten the skin here in the photo, so I'm going to hit V again. If I wanted to brighten the skin inside of the black and white panel, if I drag this up, it's going to brighten everything that is close to that skin color. So it's going to affect the blinds, and it's also, since the wall here is pretty warm, it's going to affect that level as well. So if I hover above the highlights of a skin, and if I start to scroll up, you can see that a lot of parts in the image just start to get a little bit brighter. If I scroll down, all those parts get darker. So I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm going to look to see where do I want his skin tone to be at in the highlights. And I'm thinking right around there looks good. So I also affected the blinds here, and I don't think I made those too bright. I'm gonna bring them down just a touch. So of course when I bring that down, the skin comes down too. So I'm gonna drag the skin up a little bit. Also, if you look, whenever you're hovering over a certain part, if you look off to the side, inside of this right here, it'll highlight which color that you're actually going to be affecting. So if I'm hovering over the skin, if you look over to the right there, it's got the orange highlighted. So that's just telling you that the skin has mostly orange colors, and so anything that's orange is going to be affected. Whenever I'm over here in the shutter, that is under the magenta. So if I drag up or down, it'll mostly affect magentas. If I'm over the wall, that's yellow. And then if I'm over the coat, it says the coat is either blue or purple, or it just doesn't register as any color at all. And then his his cuffs here are also blue. So there is a little bit of a blue tint on his coat. So if I find a little bit of that blue here, I'm going to see what happens if I start to drag that up. So when I drag that up, that is going to make the smoke brighter, which is a nice effect. It's going to make his cufflink brighter, and it's going to make his coat just a tiny bit brighter. So I moved that up just a little bit, just to bring up the detail in his cufflink and bring in his coat and his smoke. All right, so this looks pretty good to me. I don't see that I need to do anything else inside of Lightroom for this image. I'm going to zoom in here just to make sure. When you start to brighten things too much, you start to introduce a lot of noise into your photo. And if you're in black and white, the photo kind of starts looking like it's film grain, which is cool, which that's okay. But it could also start to look bad if you add too much noise. So like this wall back here, this wall looks like it's getting kind of noisy. So I'm going to darken down that wall, just kind of to get rid of some of that noise. And I'm actually gonna end up replacing most of this wall, but I don't want the wall to look too bad. And the wall was probably too bright, anyways. And you have to imagine what the wall is going to look like after we add in the lighting pattern hitting the wall. We want most of the wall to be dark, and then we want what is lit up by the light coming through the shutters to be a little bit brighter. So I do need to drag the wall levels down a little bit, and since that's yellow and there isn't a whole lot of yellow anywhere else in the photo, I can really affect just this wall pretty easily through the black and white panel. Alright, so I'm good with that. So what I want to do now is I want to take these settings that I just created for this, and I want to copy them over onto this photo that I'm going to use for the Lightroom. For the light pattern against the wall, and by making sure that I'm using the same settings and the same raw conversion, whenever we go to composite the images together, they'll look like they belong together a lot better. So in order to easily copy these settings, I'm going to hit Shift Command C to copy. And then it comes up with the copy settings box here. I just want to make sure that all the settings that I've dialed in are all highlighted. So that would be my basic tones, my tone curve, clarity. I didn't do anything with sharpening. My black and white treatment and mix. I didn't do any split toning, so that didn't matter. I didn't do any local adjustments or noise reduction or lens correction effects. Spot removal, crop. I didn't do any of that, so the rest of that's good. I'm gonna hit copy, and then I'm gonna go over to this, and then I'm just gonna paste these settings on this photo by hitting Shift Command V. It's just gonna paste those right onto this photo. Whenever I composite these two together, I don't need to use the entire of this image right here. All I care about is the light pattern. And so in order to reduce the file size of my composite Photoshop file, I'm going to crop this one image down to just what I want. So if you start doing a lot of compositing, and if you're saving your Photoshop files, anytime you have bigger images inside of these composite PSD files, it's going to increase the file size. So one trick you can use to try to keep your file sizes down to a minimum, if you care about that sort of thing, is just to crop out what you don't need for the Photoshop files. So I'm going to crop this down to just what I want to use. So I might end up using all this in shadows, so I'm going to make sure I'm cropping in so it's just barely in the shadows. And I don't want to see any of this light brick here, and I don't care about what's shining through the glass part of the shutter up top here. So all I care is about that piece right there. So I'm going to hit enter to lock in that crop. And then also I'm just going to go back and forth. I'm going to look to see does it look like the luminosity on the wall here match what it is here. So you can see there's a little sliver of light that hit the wall here. If I hover my mouse above that, the RGB levels are all at 30%. If I go over here and hover my mouse over a spot that was about in the same spot, my RGB levels are at 32%. So this photo is just a slight bit brighter than the other one. So I'm gonna fix that just by dragging my exposure on this one down a little bit. So it went from 0.8 to 0.65. So let's see what happens. I'm now at 35.9. So let's drag it down further. We're now at 29.6. So that's pretty close to 30. So if I go back over here, this was just above 30, and this is now this is right around 30. So this looks like it's a little bit better. So if I bring this to drop into the background behind here, it looks like the levels are going to match pretty well. Alright, and that's it for today's episode. Altogether, this film noir tutorial is going to be about an hour and a half long. So instead of making you guys sit through one long hour-and-a-half tutorial, I'm splitting this up into 3 separate episodes. So the very next episode, we'll release this in a few days. The next episode, we're going to pick up where we left off here. So we're going to bring the photos into Photoshop. We're going to get them composited together by cutting some things out, resizing them, and then making sure that everything blends together very nicely. Make it look like everything belongs together as one photo. And then we'll finish up the next episode by using the clone stamp tool to clean up some parts of the image. And if you're in the Atlanta area, in the next couple of weeks, on May 15th, we're going to be having a workshop in Buford, Georgia. Me, Gene Pennington, and J.W. Southwick are going to be running the workshop, and Carl, who was the model for this film noir shoot, he's going to be there. We're going to have this exact same film noir setup. And not only will you be able to take a photo similar to what we're working with here, but there's going to be maybe 4 or 5 other looks within the film noir. And plus, we're going to have 5 other models too. So there's going to be 6 models total. We're going to have makeup artists there. There's going to be photographers there. It's going to be a good time. You ought to come out and check it out.